Hi, this is Robert, and I wanted to talk to you about a group of films. I've been trying to make this video now for a month, and I've had technical difficulties with the camera rig, getting the mic to work, and so on. As you know, I switched from an SJ cam to a GoPro camera. This requires an external mic adapter, and that's been giving me trouble, especially with a lot of the cheap mics I've tried on Amazon. I've gone back to the old mic I had in my motorcycle helmet system for the sound on this video. Anyway, what I wanted to talk about was a group of films which challenge established conventions, and I'm calling these iconoclastic films. And let's start out with whoops, it just went away on the phone. Definition of iconoclasts: a term that has come to be figuratively applied to any individual who challenges cherished beliefs or venerated institutions on the grounds they are erroneous or pernicious. So that's our definition, and I'm going with a broad definition. There are a lot of films that appeal to the rebellious side of the human nature. I think humanity doesn't grow unless we challenge established institutions. Iconoclasts actually comes from a term for people who would smash religious icons, in that they felt the religion of their day was too repressive. We'll start with the conventional definition when we talk about this movie, Monty Python's Life of Brian, which is an amazing satire, came out in the mid-70s. And got a lot of flack for being an attack on religion, which I don't really see it as an attack on the Christian religion at all. I see it as poking a lot of fun at people who need to be told the answers, who, I don't know how to put it kindly, but folks who need a leader to follow, who have to be told what to believe and so on. Sheep, basically. This film is done by Monty Python, the British comedy group. It's called The Life of Brian. Brian is played by Graham Chapman, who, he's not even on the back cover. Interesting. Brian is a guy growing up in Judea at the time of Christ and gets mistaken as a Messiah. And this crowd follows him around and, asking for all the answers to their questions. And the poor guy, he doesn't know. He tells them, fuck off. And they go, yes, Lord, but how shall we fuck off? Anyway, it's a great movie. It pokes a lot of fun at things that I think need to be examined, but I think it does it respectfully as well. Judge for yourself. Here we go with Dogma. This is Kevin Smith's Poison Valentine to his Catholic upbringing. And it sure does poke a lot of fun, merciless fun, at some of the institutions of the Catholic religion. And it basically is I don't know if you can call it a passion play, but all the characters are in it. From angels, two fallen angels played by Ben Affleck and Matt Damon, to a demon played by Jason Lee. We have the voice of God being played awesomely by Alan Rickman. We have God herself played by Alanis Morissette. And it's also icing on the cake, it's a Jay and Silent Bob movie. So it has a lot of humor in it. This is a very tongue-in-cheek look at religion. Basically, our heroes, led by Linda Fiorentino, are fighting to stop the end of the world against all the forces of evil and the forces of self-interest, actually, in terms of our fallen angels, who we find if they get their way and get to go back to heaven, they end up destroying creation as we know it. But it's an awesome, funny movie. If you haven't seen it, you're missing out. So, let's go to our broader definitions of iconoclasts. People who challenge the established beliefs in their chosen field. And filmmaking certainly applies. And in 1941, RKO Studios invited Orson Welles, the infant terrible of the East Coast theater, to come out to Hollywood and make a film carte blanche. He came up with this amazing movie, Citizen Kane, which I'm playing in the background here, which is a thinly veiled portrayal of the life. No, let's say it's loosely based on the life of William Randolph Hearst. And in this, Charles Foster Kane is a powerful newspaper man who uses his wealth to buy the love of the public. He tries to run for public office and fails. But anyway, this film challenges so many things. One, first of all, our view of wealth. You know, the American dream is that it's always rags to riches, and, you know, you work hard and you're going to be wealthy and happy. And that doesn't always happen. Kane's world, his life, the story's more riches to rags, where all his wealth and influence can't buy him happiness or even fulfillment, I would say. So this film not only challenges our beliefs on wealth and prosperity and the American dream, but Welles challenged the orthodoxy of the Hollywood studio system and how films were made at the time. He came out to Hollywood and knew very little about filmmaking, and we have to credit his cameraman, Greg Toland. Yes. Greg Toland was an established cameraman, and basically Welles would ask for things that had never been done before, and Toland had to figure out if he could do it. And the man, credit to his talent, he rose to the challenge, and they did a lot of amazing camera work in this film. One of the things you'll see in Citizen Kane that had never been done before, or rarely if ever been done before, was they would show the ceiling of the set. They would build a set with a ceiling and put the camera down low so you're looking up past the characters at the ceiling, which was in direct opposition to the way most Hollywood films were made. None of the sets had ceilings because that's where you hung the lights. And in the case of Kane, they had to figure out where they could put the lights in a set with a ceiling. But it did definitely add to the reality of feeling you were in a real room and not on a studio set. Another thing that Welles did in this film, there were so many innovations, but another thing he did was the deep focus shot, where people in the foreground would be in focus and people at the far end of a banquet table would also be in focus. And there's a famous scene with that. What we're looking at now at the intro of the film is a fake newsreel they came up with to introduce the life of Charles Foster Kane. And let's see if I can I jump a few scenes here? But this is a groundbreaking film. So many technical innovations. But the film stars Welles as Charles Foster Kane, Joseph Cotton as a fellow who worked with him on the way up and then realized that he needed to split off on his own. But there were a lot of innovations. The end film, I mean, it's not a particularly happy film, but it is definitely a great film. And it's technically superb. It usually makes it on most critics' lists of the 10 greatest films ever made. Most people won't call it here's the deep focus shot. Most people won't call it their favorite movie, but they'll admit it's probably the best film ever made from a technical standpoint. Now, in the 40s, Welles challenged the studio system, and in the mid to late 50s, in France, there was a revolution in cinema. It was called the French New Wave. And two directors were key in this process. We have to mention Francois Truffaut with his awesome film, The 400 Blows, about a young man growing up in the French school system and rebelling against it. But here I've chosen a film by my favorite director, Jean-Luc Godard, his film Breathless, which is an amazing revolutionary statement. These films challenged the way films were made. They had a little bit of off-the-wall, tongue-in-cheek character. They were, in a lot of ways, they were guerrilla cinema, and that they be filmed on city streets with cameras hidden in shopping carts and so on. We have to give a nod to Godard's awesome cameraman, Raoul Coutard, and they actually filmed many scenes on the streets of Paris. Here we have Jean-Paul Belmondo playing a minor crook who commits murder in a very cinematically stylistic way and is on the run, and for some reason decides to hide in the middle of Paris with his girlfriend. And there's just a lot of innovative techniques used in this. They do things to take you out of the movie to where they want you to know that you're watching a movie at all times. So they kind of make the movie draw attention to itself. But it's very creative. If you haven't seen this movie, it's definitely worth a watch. Let's talk about our governments and their policies and how they aren't necessarily working for the public good all the time. That was especially evident in the late 50s, early 60s, in terms of the defense policies among the two great superpowers. And the United States embraced a defense policy that was called MAD, Mutual Assured Destruction, which basically meant that each side in the Cold War amassed enough nuclear weapons to blow the other side and most of the rest of the world away, obliterate them completely. So we had this huge stockpile of nuclear weapons, and many filmmakers wanted to point out the fallacy of that. Stanley Kubrick, one of my favorite filmmakers, who is a true revolutionary in both filmmaking and in how many of his movies are very tongue-in-cheek satires and exposés of the dysfunction in our society. He came up with a film called Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. This film was made in about 1964, I believe. Stars Peter Sellers in not one, not two, but three roles, including the title character, Dr. Strangelove. If you haven't seen this film, the plot's pretty familiar. An American general goes rogue and sends a bomber fleet towards Russia with the intention of starting World War III and purifying the earth. The majority of the film is about the efforts of the governments on both sides to prevent this from happening, to try and recall these guys. The drama plays out that back then you at least had some time while the bombers were en route to try and call them back. It's not like nowadays where it only takes like half an hour for a missile to go around the world and begin World War III. This film is very tongue-in-cheek, has some amazing visuals, has some classic lines in it, like my favorite is, "Don't fight in here, gentlemen, this is the war room." And it has the iconic shot of Slim Pickens riding an H-bomb down to glory. Amazing film. Another film came out at the same time that was on the same subject, that was deathly serious, and I can't cover Strangelove without mentioning this film, and that's Fail Safe. This is an awesome drama. If you haven't seen it and you like dramas of the 60s, 50s, 60s era like I do, you might really enjoy this one. But again, this points out the fallacy of the mutual assured destruction policy. And the plot is almost identical. This film was actually taken from a book at the time, whereas Kubrick's film was, Kubrick wrote the screenplay, as I understand. He and someone else whose name I've forgotten, pardon me. This film involves a computer accident that sends a bomber wing on its way to Russia. And Peter Fonda, as the president, has some amazing tense scenes over the phone trying to convince his Russian counterpart that this is an accident. We didn't mean it. And there's an amazing conclusion that frightens and sometimes disappoints people, but it's well worth watching. Amazing film. Since we're talking about Kubrick, we have to mention what is, I'm going to call it the greatest anti-war film ever made, even though there's been so many, including Apocalypse Now and so on, but I'm going with Kubrick's amazing film with Kirk Douglas, Paths of Glory. This film is set in World War I, and it just shows how generals are more or less playing chess with human lives. And it's an awesome film, well worth the watch. Again, it's just critical of the whole idea of war in general as a way to solve problems. In the 60s, young people were being drafted and sent off to fight in the war in Vietnam, and it was generally the poor sons of America. The rich sons of America usually managed to evade the draft and stay home. So there was this definite distrust of the government policies, and just the system in general. And this began the rise of the counterculture in America, where we had the hippies and the young people, anti-war activists, and even rebel bikers, all protesting the way things were. And I think the greatest film of the era, or at least the culmination of it, is Dennis Hopper's Easy Rider, which is an amazing film. I think it captures the era very well. Peter Fonda and Dennis Hopper play bikers who make a big score, and they ride off in search of the promised land, someplace where they can fulfill their dreams. And sadly, they don't find it. But it's a scathing look at America of its day and the divisions, which in many ways haven't gone away. I mean, there's still that challenge to the establishment, or, right now it's boiled down into liberal versus conservative. Anyway, this is a stunning film, beautifully shot. It also, I would be neglectful if I don't mention that this film is the one that brought Jack Nicholson to fame and made him a leading star. He has a minor role in this film, but he steals the movie. It's pretty amazing. If you're a Nicholson fan, you haven't seen this, watch it. I also have to mention the amazing soundtrack, which does much to capture the spirit of the era. So let's talk about dystopian futures. And I realize this is probably getting a bit one note, but I believe this is my last Kubrick film that I'll mention. And in 1971, Kubrick came out with his dystopian future movie, A Clockwork Orange, based on the Anthony Burgess book. And Kubrick does an amazing job of translating the book with its crazy, ultra-violent characters and futuristic slang into one of the most visually stunning, exciting, so horrible but you can't look away, mesmerizing films you've ever seen. But it stars Malcolm McDowell as Alex, who is a young juvenile delinquent. He leads a band of his droogs around robbing and raping, and eventually he gets caught and charged with murder. He ends up in prison. As a way to get out of prison, he submits to a mind control technique that's alleged to cure you of criminality. Unfortunately, it also cures him of loving music. The film is about freedom of choice, and the government in this film is repressive. The police run around as thugs. The film also talks a lot about free will, and that are we still human if we no longer have our choice to be good or bad? But it's an amazing film. If you haven't seen it, it's a bit uncomfortable to watch, but it's worth watching. In the same vein, Terry Gilliam of Monty Python fame uses amazing artistic eye and came up with this stunning film of a dystopian future. He called it Brazil. Stars one of my favorite actors, Jonathan Pryce, as a young guy in this just bleak future. He works in the most depressing office you've ever seen, and he fantasizes all day. He's met this co-worker who he's enamored with, and he has fantasies of saving her from the cruel future they live in. And sadly, reality steps in, and he gets involved inadvertently with revolutionaries and gets arrested. And I don't want to say any more, but it's an amazing film. I can't recommend it more highly, but it's a super film to watch and visually stunning. Okay, challenging established institutions. And one of the most established institutions in America is the power of network television and how they control what we see and hear. Is it real unless the networks say it's real? In '76, Network came out. And it had this amazing script by satirist Paddy Chayefsky, amazing playwright. And Network is a very dark, tongue-in-cheek satire of the excesses a television network can go to. And it has a who's who list of actors, just amazingly well cast. We have William Holden and Peter Finch in this movie, Faye Dunaway and Robert Duvall. Peter Finch won an Oscar for his role as the newscaster Howard Beale, who his ratings are starting to slump because, he's the news anchor on a fourth-rate network, and his evening news show is failing in the ratings, and they decide to cancel him. And sadly, it unhinges him because it's been his whole life. And he gets on the air and just announces that he's going to kill himself the next night on TV. The ratings shoot up, and the network goes, "Oh, wow, we've got a thing happening." And they put him back on and just let him rant on the air. And his rants, are pretty cool. I mean, they are, in many cases, he's spot on with the truth. And sadly, that truth is a little too sharp for the people who own the network to bear. And I'm not going to say any more, but if you haven't seen this film, watch it. It's amazing. Let's talk about sexual mores and sexual institutions. We have a musical satire, came out in the mid-'70s, and God, this is one wild ride. So this is the Rocky Horror Picture Show, which challenges so many sexual standards and mores. This film was an absolute total flop when it came out, and then became a cult classic on many midnight theater runs. You've probably heard the hit song from this. It's called The Time Warp. It's sung by the show's creator, Richard O'Brien, who plays Riff Raff, who's this odd little hunchback butler. It stars Susan Sarandon and Barry Bostwick as two newlywed motorists. Their car breaks down in the middle of nowhere, and they go to this castle to get out of the rain, and Riff Raff opens the door and introduces them into a much broader, weirder world than they ever knew existed. We hear the time warp, and then the main character of the film is introduced, and that's Tim Curry in his breakthrough role as Dr. Frankenfurter, the transvestite, transsexual mad doctor from transsexual Transylvania. And, at this point, you're just going, oh, okay, what the hell? I'll just ride along for the ride, see what happens. It's such a wild movie. If you haven't seen it, everyone should see it at least once. It's pretty entertaining. And I also wanted to talk about how visual movies, and let's talk about drugs and the drug scene and how that challenges. It seems like drug use and abuse creates a different viewpoint, which challenges that of the established principles. And there are two movies here which I think deal with the drug issue and talk about drugs in a very amazing way. And both are just visually exciting, visually stunning movies. The first here is Trainspotting. This is Danny Boyle's breakthrough movie, I think. Keep forgetting which came first, this or 28 Days. But this film stars Ewan McGregor in one of his earliest roles as a drug addict, and he and his friends spend the time just hanging around waiting to score. And it just shows what your life can fall to when you are addicted to heroin. It shows quite visually the depths you will sink to in order to get a score. It's a stunning film, very much worth watching. In a similar vein is this film, Darren Aronofsky's Requiem for a Dream. Another visually stunning movie, and it's about how drug use can destroy a family. And it stars Ellen Burstyn and Jared Leto in it. Amazing film, highly recommended, well worth a watch. I'm running out of steam here, I'm getting tired. Last time I did this, I had a coffee. Oh, I didn't mention, this is the 5th time I've tried to do this. Like I said, I was having technical difficulties. The last one I filmed, I was kind of tired and not in the mood, so I'm not sure how much energy is in it. This video is going to be added to that, and hopefully the Frankenstein result will be a semi-entertaining video for you, at least, I hope. Let's talk about Fight Club. This is a film I put off watching for a while because I kind of went, Fight Club? Who'd want to watch a film about a fight club? But this is an amazing statement on masculinity and manhood in our technological, clerical society. What does it mean to be a real man nowadays? How do men connect to their identity as men nowadays when, we're supposed to be just meek office workers, get an apartment and furnish it and all this, and, how does this actually fulfill our souls? What are we looking for? What can we do to help the world or, make our lives meaningful? And this film shows a rather dysfunctional way to do it, but it talks about how men get frustrated, try and find meaning, and that could turn to depression and rebelliousness and so on. But again, this is a visually stunning movie. This David Fincher is the director, stars Brad Pitt and Edward Norton, and it's just an amazing film. I really love this, and have to also mention Helena Bonham Carter, who I never really liked because of all the costume movies she had done up to the time, and then she does this amazing character in Fight Club. I just fell in love with her from then on. I said, wow, this woman is an amazing actress. The film stars Edward Norton as a guy who's just an office drone, and how his world gets rocked after he meets Brad Pitt, and they try and search for some meaning. And I don't want to add any spoilers to it, but again, if you haven't seen this film, it is well worth the watch. I'm just going to mention this film. It's visually stunning. Enter the Void, and this is a lot of films kind of try and deal with the afterlife and what goes on, and this film kind of tries to visually show it, but whereas most do it in a kind of religious, philosophical context, which is a bit of a buzzkill for me, this does it as part of an action story. It's very entertaining. And again, like I said, with many of these films, visually stunning. A lot of these films are revolutionary in just how they show visuals, how they approach the camera work, the things you see in the movie. This is one of them. I can recommend watching this film. So I think that's 10. Iconoclastic. My microphone fell off. Oh God, I hope so I guess half this film's going to be muffled. Sorry about that. Oh boy. I think this video is cursed because every time I try and do something with it, there's some technical or other difficulty. But anyway, I wanted to show that there are a lot of movies out there that do a great job of it, making us think and challenging cherished belief systems and government doctrines and so on. I hope you found this interesting. If you did, please like and subscribe. And again, thanks for watching. I appreciate all of you out there. Have a great day.